I'm not sure if I can think of another coin that was struck for nearly 500 years.
It's astonishing to think of the artifacts that they are.
Welcome back to another edition of On the Money. My name is Chris Clifton, CEO here at Coin Advisor, and I'm joined with Justin Adams, our senior numismatic advisor, to discuss what is my favorite ancient coin, the Athenian Owl. And the Athenian Owl holds a special place in many collectors' heart, not only for its beauty and prestige, one of the most important coins historically that you could hold in your hands. And I can't think of a better expert in the industry that has studied these coins over the years than Justin Adams. So I appreciate you taking some time away from your clients to speak with us about the Athenian Owl.
My pleasure, always.
Okay. So, let's go back, almost 2,500 years ago.
Uh-huh.
And this coin became a world recognized trade unit, probably the most recognized trade unit at that time.
Yes.
And I wanted to find out a little bit more about the coin and its origin.
Yeah, it was a staple of trade for centuries. And when you think about what is the Aegean shoreline in the 6th century BC, it was a region known as Ionia, went through a period known as the Ionian Awakening. So this is a name for the initial phase of classical Greek civilization. And we're talking literally the cradle of democracy, the birth of Western art, literature, philosophy. And this is when artisans begin to render human and animal form more realistically instead of stick figure-like. So it was very much a renaissance of the times. And the survival of these specimens, when you think that they're more than 400 years older than Christ, it's astonishing to think of the artifacts that they are. They're literal artifacts in every sense of the word. And so the origin of these, going from what's called the archaic, was the original version of an Athenian owl. The archaic version started around 510 BC, lasting up until about 450 BC. And then a short span later in 440 BC, you have what's called the classic era of the Athenian owl. And that's the most widely produced version that's most iconic around the world, lasting up until 404 BC. And this is when Athens surrendered to Sparta, ending the Peloponnesian Wars. And they call that the end of the golden age of Athens.
Now, the purity of this coin, struck in silver, gold, copper, can you explain a little bit about their composition?
Absolutely. So the Laurium mines in Athens, which in the hills of Attica, was a very, very rich silver, something that couldn't even be replicated in other parts of the ancient world, of which the silver Athenian owl was produced in great quantities. Presumably gold were as well, but however, we've only heard of 3 gold Athenian owl tetradrachms that have ever been sold at private auction. They went for over $1 million each.
So this piece, the most recognized international trade unit, still to this day, collectors all over the world know about this coin. In fact, it's featured in a book.
Exactly.
It's listed as number 10, right? In the 100 greatest ancient
in the list of
book.
the top 100 greatest ancients, you'll find on page 29, the Athenian owl is listed as number 10 in this book. And so it's an astounding read. I would recommend anybody pick up the book of the top 100 greatest ancients, because it's going to give you a format to follow in your endeavors with ancient coins.
Now, I've got a specimen here. This one's a mint state coin, okay? This coin's actually been placed in one of our collectors' collections, and it's getting ready to go out tomorrow to them. And I pulled this coin out. I want to get it on camera because it's probably one of the better specimens that I've seen. I want to put this coin in your hand and have you walk me through the different elements on the obverse and reverse.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. So as you indicated, this is a mint state example. And per the Sheldon scale, we know that a mint state coin would exhibit a grade of 60 or higher. But in ancients, you'll notice there's 2 attributes of a surface and a strike pedigree, which are 5-point attributes. So they don't use the numeral scale, like the Sheldon scale that we're accustomed to with modern coins, such as an MS-63 or an MS-65. Right. Categorically, you'll still see the Sheldon of a mint state. However, the strike and the surface can be 5-point attributes, like a strike 5 out of 5 in this case, and the surface 4 out of 5. So the strike is very strong, a very prominent feature that we look for on coins, but also surface condition, how much corrosion these exhibit, which again, for a piece that's over 2,400 years old, it's astonishing to see them in a mint state condition whatsoever. And in the Sheldon classification, it goes from a mint state to a mint state star, after which it goes to a choice mint state and then a choice mint state star. I've only known of one choice mint state star example that ever surfaced, and it actually was picked up by a Japanese collector at auction, something like $36,000 years ago.
Incredible.
In a population one known to exist in that condition. So these are astonishing to hold in your hands. Like I said, they're artifacts in every sense of the word, most of which are in the VF to XF range. Okay. Several years ago, a discovery was made where some clay amphoras, which are vessels that would usually hold water or wine. And there's these amphoras that were discovered buried in the earth, which they think might have hastily been buried during the course of a battle, because the condition of which were so astounding. These were the nicest Athenian owls to ever come to market, seeing
Sure.
ones in mint state condition, right? And so they think they were hastily buried during the course of a battle to preserve that wealth. In which case, if they had lost the battle, then the invaders would have to find it, right? So the condition of these, to be able to hold one in your hand in a mint state condition, there's so much allure behind the story of these and how they affect even modern numismatics.
Yeah. So you spoke in regards to the quality. Okay.
Correct.
I want to discuss the design and how that transitioned throughout the 3 periods of the Athenian Owl.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So when we look at the obverse of the coin, which this one is slightly tilted because no two Athenian owls were ever the same, you would have an anvil possessing an inlay where the molten metal would be placed into. Depending on how hot that metal was, whether you could cast a good strike into it without breaking the flan, which today we refer to planchets, the blanks that we strike coins upon. These were known as flans, and they started off as molten globs that were poured into an anvil. Depending on how hot that was, you would either cast a good strike or you'd cast a weak strike with broken edges.
Mhm.
So you'd see cracks in the flan, almost like a cookie, if you will. Now, the war-crested helmet of Athena, the goddess of wisdom and warfare, she was the patron who actually won over what became known as Athens. The city was named after her. There was a contest between Poseidon and Athena as to who would be the patron god or goddess of Athens. And so Poseidon was known to have stabbed a trident into the ground, and a spring of water came up. The Athenians, as they later became known, were very intrigued at the source of water, but when they tried to drink it, they realized it was salt water and useless. Now, Athena had produced an olive tree, which became a symbol of commerce, with everything from wood to oil to food, and the city was hence therefore named after Athena. So when Athens was creating these silver tetradrachms, as they're known, this was considered 4 days' wages for a soldier, a tetradrachm.
Mhm.
So there's a dram, which is a singular unit. Tetradrachm would be the equivalent of 4 drams, right? This is said to be 4 days' wages for a soldier. Now, notice the centering. Something that I want to touch upon is that centering is something in the ancient world that wasn't given much consideration. Okay. So the war-crested helmet of Athena, where she had the plumage of the horsehair above her war-crested helmet, would often be not in view whatsoever. Now, if you could attain a centered strike with an Athenian owl, where you'd have the war plumage in her helmet, often some other trademark, such as the chin or the nose, would be cast out of view.
Sure.
It's said that less than 1% of Athenian owls are actually fully centered, full crest examples, and those can bring shocking premiums in today's market. Now, when we look at the reverse or patron animal, the owl, symbolic of wisdom, you'll notice the letters alpha, theta, epsilon, which is of the Athenians. And this is something that transpired generations, even after when Athens had surrendered to Sparta in 404 BC with the assistance of the Persians behind the Spartans to defeat Athens. You know, for dynasties and generations that followed, even enemies of Athens were still producing Athenian owls in the original format of the Athenians, including the alpha, theta, epsilon initials that are still inscribed onto the coin centuries later. So knowing these were produced for over 500 years in Greece, but also centuries later by enemies that followed in dynasties that occurred afterward, it's just astonishing these still exist.
Sure. I'm not sure if I can think of another coin that was struck for nearly 500 years. A very similar design, same strike, weight, purity. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, you think of the pillar dollar, essentially.
Right. Pillar dollars. You know, we talked earlier about the silver reals and how those were struck for centuries. They pale in comparison to the Athenian owl.
Yeah. It's incredible. These were found being traded everywhere from India all the way to Persia.
On into Spain.
Almost 2,500 years old. Justin, are these coins considered rare?
You know, by today's standard, when we think of a silver eagle to the tune of 30,000 coins being produced, everything hits the fan. And frankly, I can think back to 1999 when they started the statehood quarter program. It's what we refer to as the adrenaline injection of the numismatic industry because it brought in tens of millions of new collectors into the hobby. And so when we think of how many millions of people out there collect modern day silver eagles, right? If 1% of those folks had an appreciation for rare coins or wanted something from antiquity, I would almost argue probably 50% of those folks would probably appreciate a specimen like this. But let's just pretend for a moment that 1% of those people had an interest. It puts a real stranglehold on the market. So I've heard that anywhere from 30,000 to 100,000 Athenian owls might still exist today in any condition whatsoever.
All across the world.
Correct. Across all eras, such as the archaic, the classic, and the new age, right? How many of those are actually certified by NGC? Only thousands, of which most are in the VF to XF range. That recent discovery that gave us qualities into the mint state realm, and like I said, the mint state star example, which sold, or choice mint state star that went for $36,000. These are outstanding specimens to own. And in comparison, they're far more rare than modern numismatics. And it gives our clients a real appreciation of the value and the education that we provide in the industry.
So something that's been on my mind here, how has the Athenian Owl affected even modern coinage?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked that because it's well documented that Teddy Roosevelt carried an Athenian owl as a pocket piece. And he was very enamored by the high relief quality of these ancient coins. So much so that he actually commissioned Augustus St. Gaudens to redesign US coins. He wanted to directly instill more art and culture into our society via numismatics. So he chose the most renowned sculptor of the time, Augustus St. Gaudens, who unfortunately never got to see his prized work, what we refer to as the St. Gaudens double eagle, considered the most beautiful coin in US mint history. St. Gaudens passed in 1907 from cancer, and he never got to see his work come to fruition, but it ushered in a new era of coinage in the United States and frankly throughout the world. When we think of high relief coinage today, whether it be the modern palladium eagle that has existed since 2017, or especially the 2009 ultra high relief commemorative of St. Gaudens' work that was finally achieved due to modern technology, we actually owe that debt of gratitude and an ode to Teddy Roosevelt and his theory and his expectation for numismatics.
Yeah. And I've got a theory about how the Athenian Owl has actually affected the US coin market, and I want to get your opinion on that. You know, you and I have been in the numismatic marketplace since about 2005, okay? Mm-hmm. And back then it was all about modern coins, classic issues. There wasn't much conversation in the category of antiquities.
Right.
And that has completely changed. And I remember back probably 6-7 years ago when we started seeing the Athenian Owls come into the marketplace, all different grade variations and varieties. Mm-hmm. And since then, I feel like there's been an enormous amount of demand for ancient coins. And I want to get your opinion on that because I think this coin has literally opened up the door for more and more interest every single year for ancient coins.
Indeed. It's truly changed the landscape of numismatics. And since 2008, when NGC launched their Ancients division, it was to protect and authenticate those coins, just like we do modern era coins, right? And the difference that's made at auction blocks, especially to say collectors who are getting ready to, bid six figures on an ancient coin, you probably want some guarantee of authenticity.
Absolutely.
Right? Nonetheless, condition, which those surface and strike attributes, like we talked about, it has changed the landscape of numismatics. And we've only seen more and more interest growing in this sector of numismatics to where obviously full well that we try to go out there and source these now, and we can only find quantities of 1s and 2s and 3s versus years ago, we could get hundreds of them in groups. Mm-hmm. And the market has dried up so much that these Athenian owls have become a mainstay of collections and very much a keystone in many people's collections.
And as I do many times, I'll listen in on Justin's calls and presentations to his customers. And I overheard you saying something a few weeks ago. We had a few owls in, and we were placing those in private collections. And I overheard you telling a very interesting story about heads and tails.
Yes.
And this might be the coin where that came from. And that's something that's still being used today at every football game. And can you tell that story for us?
So this is said to be the first coin in history that had a literal head on the obverse and a tail on the reverse. gave birth to a term that we still commonly use 2,400 years later when we reference heads and tails. It is from the Athenian Owl.
Is this one of the earliest coins that's ever been struck and found on record?
Great question as well. So the earliest coins of the Western world were not known to be struck in Greece until 550 BC. Prior to that, there were forms of currency like seashell trade, livestock trade. Even the Mayans used cocoa beans as a form of currency. So there's always been forms of currency in some regard, but when we think of metallurgy being employed in coins, it was known to be 550 BC. And a few years ago, we had the privilege of bringing to market some Ionian electrum, which was naturally occurring gold, usually found in nugget form in riverbeds, but this actually reset the timeline to circa 725 BC. And NGC put him in a special grading slab that read the dawn of coinage. That's now the very first coin in the book of the top 100 greatest ancients on page 9 called Ionian electrum. And we had the privilege of bringing some of those examples into our clients' collections.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Personal question: do you still hold your pocket piece?
I do. I didn't bring it with me today, but yes, I do carry it with me frequently because to be able to pull that out and present it to people and let them hold an artifact of that caliber is astonishing.
Yeah, it's incredible. And I do consider this my favorite ancient coin for several reasons. For those of you at home who have had a chance to actually hold an Athenian owl in your hands, it's the most high relief coin and special coin that you've ever had a chance to hold. And the stories, I can only imagine the people who held these coins and how they've changed history. And it's just an incredible piece here to hold. This particular example is in mint state. It's a 4 of 5 surface and a 5 of 5 strike. What's the price on a coin like this in today's market, Justin?
You know, we have examples that come in that, depending on those two attributes, in a mint state condition, they're usually in about the $2,000 to $3,000 range. We've had choice mint state examples that I think were upwards in around the $7,000 range. The highest graded example, like I said, sold at auction, reportedly $36,000.
Have you handled a decadron before?
I have, actually, a Syracuse decadron.
Why is that coin so important, and why is that coin so much more expensive? Is it just a rarity issue?
Due to its size. So that would be a 10 count in unit in monetary value, as this is a tetra, a deca is a monetary unit of 10.
Mm-hmm.
So those were only made in small quantities because they were payable usually between governments, if you will, versus the commoner, you know, the individual person utilizing it for commerce.
For larger transactions.
Right, exactly. So smaller quantities of those made, thus in turn, their survival rates are very small.
Yeah. Incredible. No, I always appreciate getting you here on the coin chair, as we call
Always
it.
my pleasure.
And being able to share with some of our clients and other collectors the historical value of what coins and things that we work with every single day.
Absolutely.
And
we're stewards of history, and we take great pride in that. So we appreciate all of you, our clients that entrust us with your collections, and we look forward to it always.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time today.
My pleasure.
Thank you again for watching another episode of On the Money. And we appreciate the comments, guys. Go ahead and type in some comments. If you have any ideas of subjects and coins that you want us to cover in the future, we'd be more than happy to consider that. And also smash the like button. We really appreciate, and knowing that our viewers are enjoying the content.
Yeah, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. We appreciate all of your views. Leave comments down below. We look forward to addressing those comments and bringing you even greater content.